Mark Shuttle, Aubrey Butte Neighborhood District.
Don Kramer, HOA.
Mary Ann Kramer, HOA, Woodgie Creek.
David Mormon, American Red Cross. Good morning.
Good morning, Robin Church, Firewise Coordinator for Three Pines, Emergency Preparedness Lead for Summit West Neighborhood District in Bath.
Good morning, Eric Metzger, representing the Oregon Department of Forestry.
Kyle Collins, Deschutes County Planning.
Heather Miller, Oregon State Fire Marshal. Ariel Cowan, Oregon State University Extension.
Good morning, Craig Letts with Project Wildfire Consulting.
And good morning, Gary Marshall, Executive Director for Deschutes County Fire District.
Greg Bryant, Deschutes Woods.
Good morning, everybody. Robert Newey, Deschutes National Forest, Deputy Fire Staff Fuels.
Morning, Lauren Street. I'm with the Deschutes County Natural Resources Department.
Good morning, Tony DeBone, Deschutes County Commissioner. Monty Damarel, Newberry Regional Partnership.
William McDonald, Gridlock West.
Grant Solich, Grant Management Services.
Tony Wilcoxer for Good State Wildfire.
Kevin Moriarty, Deschutes County Forester.
Brent Heiner, Deschutes County Fire Active Communities Coordinator. Thanks everyone for being here today. And then just one more time, if you haven't yet, please do your intro in the chat for me. I've been missing some people lately for notes, so it's really helpful if you do that. Okay, so we have a few announcements this morning. Lauren, do you want to start us off with the grant announcements?
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple of updates. So we have the spring sweat equity Ben rental program that's running. So they're halfway through that, which is crazy. So they'll have the bends through the rest of June. And then we will have the fall fuel reduction grant available again this fall, and that will look almost exactly like it did last year. So those that application link will be on our website under grant opportunities. So that should be coming out probably September or October. Is that right, Kevin?
Yeah, we'll have the application basically September 1 through September 30th.
Yeah. We did submit a CWDG grant, and I did receive an update from our contact at ODF that that review process is still moving forward. And so that's a big fuels reduction project that we proposed in the Lapine area. We should know about that by the end of summer, which is exciting. And we do have a Juniper Ridge project going on, 79 acres of a shaded fuels break just north of Bend. And as of yesterday, they probably have about 25 acres completed, that contractor does, and they should be done sometime around the end of the month or first week of June.
All right, so next month for June, we're not having a regular meeting. We are having our annual barbecue. So I'm going to be sending out the RSVP for that this week. If you haven't done it yet, please fill that out. That'll be coming through like the normal Project Wildfire email through Constant Contact. If you aren't signed up for that, let me know and give me your email address today and I can get you on that list so that you get all the notifications and fill out that RSVP. It's gonna be really fun. We are doing a taco bar this year. So should be really good. That's through Cody's Country Catering. The reason I need your RSVP is so you can eat. I need to have a good number of attendees. So a couple other things. We have a new steering committee member. Christina Mayer from Tollgate is now joining us on the Project Wildfire steering committee. And we also have a steering committee meeting today. So if you're on the steering committee, we're meeting in here from 10 to 11. And I think that's everything. Kevin, unless you have anything else?
I guess the only other mention would be we are assisting with a fuel breaks treatment on Central Oregon Irrigation District property, kind of in the Brookswood area. That's going to start probably the beginning of June. They are not doing prescribed fire. There was actually a little bit of misinformation spread out with that, but it's just going to be a regular lock and scatter and chipping treatment for CLID property.
Right.
Hey, Corinne, what's the date, time and location for the barbecue?
Yes, so it's June 17th, and like I said, we're not gonna be having a regular meeting in here that morning. We're just gonna be meeting at the Sun River, the Shark Center, from 5 to 8 p.m. Right. So today we have Robert Newey, Deputy Fire Staff Fuels Program Manager from the US Forest Service, joining us to do an update on projects in Deschutes County and prescribed fire.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody. So I apologize, I'm not really adept at Teams. I know in this world I probably should be, but I always work on, on Zoom. I always work on Teams. So I will share a PowerPoint and we'll just run through, and really, I think my focus was going to be primarily on really Forest Service, fuel treatments, prescribed fire, really, and then get into really where we're planning on going this spring. Obviously, we're already burning, but then we can then open certainly for discussion afterwards and questions. So please shout out if you have questions. But I've been with the Deschutes National Forest since about 2007, working in the Central Oregon area, and currently just moved from the Newberry Fire Management Officer position for the last about 4 or 5 years, and this last winter moved over into Fuels Program Manager, Deputy Fire Staff position. So that's really coordinating all the first budget, but then also all the everywhere we're planning on moving towards for fuels work on the forest. So the Deschutes itself is about 1.6 million acres, and it really has a wide variety of different types of fuels, depending on where you're at in the Sisters, Bend, or the Crescent area. And on that 1.6 million acres, most of it, or a good portion of about 1 million acres, is really dry pine or dry ponderosa pine. And then the other portion is a mix of mixed conifer, lodgepole, juniper, mountain hemlock in the high elevation areas. And then, of course, we have open areas made up of a mixture of brush, meadows, and then also just more that desert fringe, oftentimes best habitat for desert or for sage grouse. And so for an eastern, eastern forest, if you will, we're in the rain shadow and of the Cascades, and so we have a definitely a receding gradient of moisture from the high elevations out as you move towards the east, and you definitely notice a big difference really right around that Highway 97 corridor from that moisture gradient as you're looking from the west and moving towards the east. So with that, historically, let's see. Oh, there it goes. It's just delayed. So historically, we had across the landscape in that dry pine, ponderosa pine stands, we had frequent low intensity fires. This is pre-Euro settlement, and really, I would say the Central Oregon area is really born in fire. It's naturally we had a lot of volcanic history here, and then through natural and then also indigenous peoples, we had routine and relatively frequent fire. In the dry pine ecosystems, we had fire that really occurred more on that 5 to 15 range. And then the lodgepole, which is more of a climactic species, moved into more of that 70 to 100 year time frame. And what that really, what resulted from that was really a mixed mash of a heterogeneous forest. One that was really disturbance resistant, one that was reliant on that fire disturbance to help maintain those forests in a really a healthy ecosystem, and really setting itself up well against insect and disease, and then of course high severity fire. So we know that because of tree ring data. We've got a lot of studies throughout the Central Oregon that have really dove into taking core samples, going out and looking at those tree ring, looking at the age of those trees and finding the fire history in those on those long older trees. And so if you're ever kind of tromping around the woods, you'll see what we commonly call cat faces, and that's what a cat face looks like right there on the left. And that's where there's been a scar or there's been some sort of wound in the bole. And when fire has then come in contact with that tree, it's then burned away that decay or the dead wood and leaving a cat face. And oftentimes trees will stay healthy and thrive with those burnt bases for a long time. But it's really cool for the scientists out there to be able to dive in there and take core samples and really start identifying really the ages of those trees. So moving into really Euro settlement into the late 1800s, early 1900s. I think everybody's probably fairly familiar with the Central Oregon landscape, but we had really a great stand of old age and mixed age stands of ponderous pine. And then as we moved in here, we realized that we can log that and we can start building stuff and it's great for industry. And so about 1911, we had the Great Northern Railroad expand into Bend. And at that time, that really helped spur the logging kind of revolution here, if you would. And so with large timber barons, Sheldon Hickson, Brooks Scanlon, they had a really successful operation with using track and rail systems and using a hub and spoke system where they're able to lay down rails with our flat ground here. And when they laid down that rail, then be able to go out and systematically log as much as they could, and then they'd rip those rails up and then lay them back down into the next spoke, and then just keep on working their way around that hub. And so then they were able to collect as much as they could across the landscape. There were definitely little islands that they couldn't get to because of lava flows or because they intentionally left places such as Shetland Park, as I'm sure most folks are aware that was identified as a park and reserve early on. And so and then used the river system, and then of course created the old mill in that top picture. So at that same time frame, Forest Service came along, and then Forest Service implemented a full 100% suppression rule, and then a few years later came along with the 10 a.m. rule. Now during that time, fires are really starting in the most places where the fires occurred naturally, and then also from indigenous folks, was in that dry pine landscape or fuelscape, I should say. And that was where fires routinely burned, again, at that high frequency, low severity rate. And so those fires were easy to put out. People went out, they were burning it, anywhere from 6 inches to a foot flame lengths, and people could run out there and I'm sure everybody's seen those videos of people grabbing people from the bar and getting a bunch of guys running out there to put all the fires out. Well, and that was typical. They wanted to save those trees for logging. Well, forward on to really by the late 1940s, during World War II, most of this landscape was now cut down to the ground. And so the large timber barons then, by about 1948, they had gifted most of what the footprint of the Deschutes National Forest is. They gifted a bunch of their land to the National Forest. So and I'll clear that up, not all the forest, the Deschutes National Forest was private originally, but portions of the land are the lower elevation areas. So closer to Bend, and then also areas all the way down into the Pine area. So now we're moving into, since then, it was logged and allowed for natural regrowth. And so most of our landscape or fuelscape is second growth, ponderosa pine. And then with a real prolific amount of brush in the understory. We also have, during that time, we talked about fire suppression. So we maintain that diligent work of putting every fire out. And doing a really, I'd say, darn good job at putting the majority of fires out. And so with that, we've now allowed fires, or we've allowed the fuels to grow up in really homogeneous state. And on that lower picture on the right-hand side, that's really the landscape or the fuelscape in areas that have been untreated or have not received fire across the Deschutes National Forest and really the Central Oregon area. And so really to describe this graph or this slide a little bit is in that slide on A, really that's kind of what we're shooting for is widely spaced out trees. We have a little bit of grass understory, we have some brush. And then as we start suppressing fire, we move into start allowing encroachment from conifer species. And that ends up and then also what happens is we allow for needle accumulation, needle cast accumulation. So every year, ponderosa pine will shed a third of its needles. And so you'll see that accumulation starting to occur. And that's really that primary carrier in our fuelscape across the Deschutes. So then moving over to the right, you can see that if we have those frequent fires occurring, that cleans up the ground fuels, that cleans up the competition that large, dominant, and disturbance resistant trees they have a tough time competing against that competition. So that fire cleans up that competition. And then if you move into a landscape of fire suppression, we now have an abundance of fuels and really an opportunity for fire to move from just the ground fire up into the canopy. And then something also something I want to point out, and this is kind of a good visual here, is when we think about water and water being pulled out of the ground. If you look at that top graph top slide on the right, if you visualize each one of those trees as being a straw and shoved into the ground and pulling water out of the ground. Now, if you look down at the bottom and you visualize that same idea of each one of those trees is a straw pulling water out of the ground. And so when we have that many more stems shoved in the ground and pulling water from the ground, we're going to have less groundwater as well, and less water available for the really the health of the dominant trees out there. All right, moving over to wildfire. For a long time, wildfire, like we talked about, we're full suppression mode. We still are full suppression mode, but there wasn't a lot of coordination in our organizations until locally we had the Aubrey Hall fire in 1990, and then we followed up with the Skeleton fire in 1996. Of course, we lost homes during both of those fires, and Aubrey Hall now a lot of homes are sitting within that fire scar, and so we know the fire happens here, but what naturally and from human cause. But what this really highlighted was the lack of coordination from the fire response organizations. So after that, we moved to a really a coordination. We started coordinating, I guess is really the best way to say it. So in the past, so Eric works for ODF, I worked for Forest Service. In the past, before this time, it would often be that we'd have a Forest Service or an ODF vehicle drive by a fire on somebody else's different color of land and go to your own land and fight a fire, and we wouldn't be coordinating. Now, after this happened, we started coordinating. We started engaging with each other and really taking the stance of it doesn't matter which land it is, doesn't matter, the fire is going to behave, fire is going to continue to burn, and we are going to respond to the fire regardless of ownership. And I would say this was a real win for the Central Oregon landscape and really the community, and a lot of other communities have followed suit since we've done this. The federal agencies, we've gone to what's called the Central Oregon Fire Management Services, which is a multi-agency coordination group that is between BLM and the Forest Service, where we have combined a dispatch center. ODF is also based out of there with their dispatch center. And so we can dispatch all resources out of that same location and coordinate a combined response. Forest Service has BLM land that they are responsible for, and same thing with BLM in areas that they are responsible for providing response to. Again, and then also the municipal departments, even though they have their own 911 dispatch center, our dispatch centers coordinate very closely. And then also the agent or the resources on the ground, we work really closely with each other, having multiple training sessions a year. And then we will oftentimes engage on each other's fires until the other resource can get there. And so even though wildland firefighters are not trained in structure fires, we still participate and help out on structure on fires that engage structures because of the concern of wildlife. And so there's I would say a great relationship across the Central Oregon area now. And I'd really point back to really these two fires is motivating that transition and that change in the organization structure. So after that, we had a couple laws, or a law that I want to point out that at the national level that moved on, or that helped us out of this as well. And that was really the Flame Act. And this was at the national level, of course, and the focus is really to restore fire adapted ecosystems, building fire adapted human communities, and responding appropriately to wildfire. So really looking at ways that we can think holistically on the ground. We're going to have fires in the landscape regardless of how much fuel treatments we do on the land, but the severity of those fires will change based on what we do. So if we can figure out how to both have our communities learn how to live with fire, and then also our fuelscapes and landscapes, how to live with fire appropriately. That's really the intent of the Flame Act. So across for the Forest Service, we have a lot of different projects that we are currently working on, have been working on for decades, and then also will be work that we are planning to move into the future. So just to talk a little bit about what the Forest Service does for our planning, our analysis, and from kind of inception to into really treatment. And so we have a number of different analytics and tools available to us to be able to bring a project forward and to identify where we should be working at. And one of them is the QWRA, the Quantified Wildfire Risk Assessment. And that really is a kind of interesting tool. Central Oregon was really the poster child in the nation to try out this new data and really design it around the Central Oregon area. And then since then, it's now moved on to other landscapes. And what it does is, first off, it identifies what the values are on the landscape. So we have tier 1 and tier 2 values. Tier 1 values are really anything anthropogenic or anything that has impacts to humans. So communities, watersheds, roadways, and airsheds, those type of things. Tier 2 is really all that ecosystem function and focus. And so and then collectively we got together and we identified what those values, what were important, or we identified those values and then ranked those values based on importance. And so in our mind, obviously anthropogenic values will probably always rank higher, but we also have those abilities to look at with this QWRA process. We also have the ability to pull out the ecosystem values and rank that as well. And so what we've been able to do then, look at that, and then we populate fires in a model across the landscape and see where fires are likely to burn and where they're unlikely to burn and what the severity of those fires would be. And that would look at then we're able to ascertain what are likely higher transmission zones or lower. And that is based on where we've done work before, what the fuel loading is like in those locations, and really help to identify where we should be going to for future projects. Of course, there's other tools out there. We have different modeling tools available to us and tracking tools as well. And so we use some of those tools to help further our analysis before we dive into our NEPA. And then as we look into our NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, that's a process that we're required to follow. And that's really, we identify our purpose and need. We go through and identify and analyze what values are going to be affected by doing a set type of treatment. And then we design different alternatives and then move into public commenting and scoping. And then after that, we move into implementation. And sometimes that public involvement changes the direction of that project. And so everybody in that community and outside the community have their opportunity to provide public comment to those NEPA projects and help and have their say and engage on those projects. And that's all for public consumption. So after the NEPA, we have fuels treatments. And really, because of our homogeneous fuelscape out there, we are really reliant on a wide variety of fuels treatments, a full suite of treatments, if you will. And that starts with overstory logging, goes into understory fuels treatments of really looking at those small diameter trees and cutting those out if it's overstocked. We look at the mowing and the mastication of brush where we've had too much brush in certain areas, and we have that connectivity with ladder fuels. And then we go into that actual implementation and of pile burning, if it is pile burning or under burning. And so something I want to highlight is with these projects, we're able to create jobs in the local and create opportunity in the local economy through the mills and through contracting out the majority of this work. Now with prescribed fire, that is held mostly in-house with firefighters, people that are all summer long, they're chasing fire, they're putting fires out, and then in the spring and fall, which is our typical fire or prescribed fire season, that's when people are engaged with putting fire on the ground based on unplanned events. And so we have a lot of different tools available to us. Every prescribed fire takes, I would say, a lot of time to plan out, and it's very methodical in its approach and coordination. And it takes a lot of people on the ground, whether it's a 20-acre unit up on the top right picture is on the High Desert Museum, or if it's a multiple thousand-acre project landscape burn. And so depending on the type of burn, it takes a lot of people. Then we have a lot of different tools available to us. The most common tool is hand ignition. We use drip torches, and we send people walking back and forth across the what we call a unit. And then we also implement other tools. And you can see on that top left, we're starting to implement drones, or what we call UAS, with ignition sources, and able to drop ping pong balls out of a container in the bottom, and that will light a fire underneath it. And so then we can time those ignitions. Also, what we have locally here is what we call burn bikes. They're essentially a gravity-fed drip torch off the back of the UTV. And so we're able to drag fire across the easier portions of land. We also have, of course, aerial ignition with helicopters. There are some obvious hazards with putting people up in the air, flying them at low speed, while you're dropping ping pong balls out of them as well. And so we're trying to move away from that and move over to a drone system, since there has been fatalities with the helicopter method. And so, but we're looking at trying to get more fire on the ground and getting treating closer to homes, treating both in the WUI, the wildland and urban interface, but then also in conducting restoration work in our back 40 areas that still need fire. They and really there's a net benefit anytime we are able to put fire on the ground. The focus of prescribed fire is typically that low to moderate intensity burning, trying to mimic what occurred naturally with fire, and then also trying to follow up with maintenance burning on that natural fire turn interval, following up with in that 5 to 15 year time frame. So with every operation we look at or we implement, we follow up with monitoring, and oftentimes that initial fire effect can look a little jarring. It can be disturbing, and that picture on the left, it looks initially like that the whole stand is potentially dead. But then from aerial observations, you can see that the crowns are intact, and really that unit is just off of Sun River. This is just on the east side of the exit 153 unit as you're heading south along Highway 97. And you can see that those crowns have come back. It took a couple years for to shed those red needles, but it came back. They're very healthy. We did create some snags in those areas, but that also provides habitat for wildlife. And then both when they're standing and when they fall. And then naturally regeneration occurs. And so you get starting off with grasses and brushes, and then trees start coming back in, and then we're able to come back in and burn again. And when we do have those repeated treatments, we're targeting that needle cast. And so if we're able to burn that needle cast in that first entry, that second entry, we're likely to have less needle cast. And so then we're able to, it's a lower intensity burn on that second entry. And oftentimes I would say a very boring burn. It's very, we're carrying fire in areas, and it might be more mosaic or patchy throughout that unit. And what happens with that is then you're not burning wall to wall from one edge to the other. You're leaving portions of that unit intact for, again, wildlife habitat and other functions. We also track with a variety of different treatments, from mowing, and we also mowing or burning, or if it's or just straight burning. We have different results depending on that moisture gradient. And some of them, and this slide's kind of hard to see, but some of them, the best effects that we've had is when we mow and then burn. We get that longer, we have the better or the more efficacy, if you will, for those treatments. Now, if you just mow, then what we're looking at doing is we have to get back in there oftentimes in 5 to 8 years and mow again, bless you. And so what we end up seeing that we have to get back in there repeatedly, continue mowing, and just to stay up on that ingrowth. Did I see a comment?
Oh, it was the intro.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So with prescribed fire, or with any fire, of course, we have smoke impacts, and that's oftentimes the biggest struggle that we have working with the community is how do we get around dealing with those smoke impacts, and unfortunately that's the horrible byproduct of fire. But what we see is that smoke impacts from prescribed fire versus wildfire are significantly different. They're still both, they still are both unhealthy. I don't want to persuade or try to attempt to persuade anybody that's not the case. Any smoke is bad, and we don't really want to be breathing that. However, the amount of smoke and the quantity of smoke that we introduce into a community from prescribed fire is drastically less than what we experience from wildfire. And so when we work through this, really the process of prescribed fire, we work the Forest Service, we work under what's called the Oregon Smoke Management Plan, which is under the Oregon Department of Smoke Management, who they report to the Oregon Department of Quality, or the DEQ, and they work under the National EPA office. And so there's a number of different policies, different regulations in place that, and then also relationships that we maintain and try to foster to ensure that we are working within the guidance, within the commission, and then also we work together to try to further more prescribed fire. Last year in 2024, we had a West Bend pilot project where we brought together, I would say it wasn't we, but it came, we were heavily involved because it was piloted here in Central Oregon, but it would showcase the EPA, DEQ, ODF, Smoke, Deschutes County Health, University of Oregon, OHA, TNC was there, Oregon State University, and then of course the Forest Service. All we got together for a round table, and we got together and tried to figure out a way to increase our pace and scale of prescribed fire in the West Bend area. West Bend is commonly a really difficult location. The Bend area is what's called a smoke sensitive receptor area, an SSRA, and which means it has a little more stringent rules than other areas outside of Bend. And so we worked together to figure out how we could increase our burning in that footprint. We went from a 10-year average of burning about 233 acres a year to being able to accomplish 1,800 acres last year. And yes, there were some smoke impacts, but what we were able to identify is the communication and outreach. Those tools that we created in that group were highly successful in communicating to the public in when to shut their doors, when to close their windows, and then also what type of air filters are best to use in their houses when we're conducting those burns. Not only from when we're conducting prescribed fire, but then also that same information could be used for wildfire events as well. And as we all experienced last summer, we had a pretty tremendous wildfire experience collectively, and from all indications, based on operating services, this next summer is pointing that direction again. So, but I want to highlight on the graph on the right. So those all the triangles were days that we had ignitions. And so overall in the springtime, it's very compressed time frame of about 2 months that we burned. And really last summer is really, that was more in the tail end of April through really beginning of June. And we had, even though it doesn't show all the triangles, but we had 24 operations during that time frame. Yes, we had 2 large impacts to the smoke sensors in Bend. However, they were very short-lived, and you can see those spikes on that graph there. And really, when we get, and it doesn't show it on this graph, but when we get down into the data, it shows that the major impacts were from really that 2 a.m. until about that 6 a.m. time frame. So when most people are typically in bed asleep, they can shut their windows, and if we can communicate, making sure that people understand we are burning, then they can close their houses off to the smoke. Now, when you move over into the wildfire events from really from, I would say, tail end of July through late October was wildfire events, and that all and then we had a little bit of stuff lingering into November, December from outside the area, and then also pile burning kicked in during that time. But really that portion, not only do we have a lot of big spikes, but we also have that longer duration of smoke. And then as we get down the data, it showed just that continuation of smoke throughout the day that we just couldn't get out of that smoke. Even if, like, during the daytime, it didn't clear. And so I can't say that by conducting prescribed fire, it will stop, it will keep from another fire from occurring, because we know that fires will happen on the landscape regardless. But what we know is we're treating around those communities and making those communities safe, and making it so we can decrease the potential chance for high severity of fire to roll into a community. And so that's really, but I wanted to showcase that smoke impact, because we know it's a real thing. Something we have going on this year is we've distributed out. We have a large mobile EPA mobile lab sitting in Bend, stationed at the OSU campus. And then we also have a number of, from the EPA, we have a bunch of blue or purple air monitors distributed out between Bend and all the way into South County. And then we also have some up into Jefferson County through the Deschutes County Health. They've been able to stretch sensors out for both in-home use and outside use, and so that they're collecting data in those areas as well. So that's, I think, really encouraging that we're trying to pull that information in. All right, now we get down to why it doesn't matter. So we have a couple case studies that of real events, Millie Fire and Roslyn Road Fire a number of years ago that they're the highlight. They're really effective YouTube. That's a little bit of a homework for you guys a little later. You can Google these and watch these 2-3 minute videos. And it really highlights why we do the work and when we do the work, why it's successful for firefighters. I really want to point out that when we have fuel treatments on the ground and the fire interacts with that fuel treatment, not only are we able to slow the fire down, the community safer, but then firefighters can get in there and take direct action on those fires. And so, and they can take direct action on those fires and be safe doing that. And so this bottom screen picture is actually a picture on Forest Service Road 22, also known as Finley Butte, out by the Darlene Fire. So on the left side, you have untreated stands as fire came through. Ground fire came through that stand on the left, and then I was actually standing. I was in my truck on the right side of that fire while that ground was coming through, and it was spotting across the road into a stand, part of the Ogden EA project that we had conducted a full suite of treatments, and then finished off with a prescribed fire about 2 years prior to this fire happening. And it was spotting into that unit, and we had probably 6-inch flame lengths over there, and we were able to then deploy folks and go ahead and conduct a burnout operation in front of the head of the fire and really catch that head of that fire. We still had a lot of work on the flanks, but that was just amazingly successful in that world. We are working on some more products. Our public affairs office is working on some more products to distribute, but they're just not ready to pass out quite yet. So we look at every single interaction that a wildfire that occurs when it interacts with a previous fuel treatment. So we scan through all these on a yearly basis and then input them into a program that was that I highlighted earlier, FTDIS. And what it really highlights is the amount of interactions we have with wildfires and how wildfires, the severity of wildfires changes on the landscape when it interacts with that area that we've conducted a treatment. And so on this right side, you've got Darlene 3 again. And all those green areas are areas that we've treated in the past. The yellow landscape that's really on that white or kind of 45-degree line, it's not quite 45. Everything yellow on that side is BLM land, and then Forest Service land is pretty much towards the right. And then all those treatments are highlighted in green. And I would say that led to a lot of success on the Darlene 3 fire. And we also saw that on the Little Lava fire and on a number of other fires, the large fires that we had on the landscape in this last fire season. So great successes when we have interactions, and the more treatments that we can get on the landscape, it really just sets community and firefighters up for more success. So moving into this year. So we have different communication threads. CentralOregonFire.org is an excellent resource for everybody to know about. And On that site, you can click on there. It does have an alert there that you can, if you want to sign up for both prescribed fire and wildfire text alerts, you can just text CO Fire to that number, 888-777, and you will get onto a text thread that they will notify you anytime that there's a prescribed fire, a large prescribed fire in your area, but then also specifically a wildfire. And so that's a great resource. Additionally, the aqi.oregon.gov is a great resource to look at for air quality. And that ties right into those DEQ data sites for up and down through the Central Oregon area. So if you do go to the centraloregonfire.org, I won't go there because I don't know how I'm doing on time, but okay. What we have there is an interactive map, which I just took a screen capture of that interactive map there on the left, and it highlights all of our planned activities across the Central Oregon area for the BLM, for the Ochco, and then also for the Deschutes National Forest. And they look like dots or when you're zoomed out, but as you zoom in, you get into actual polygons and they will showcase the actual unit. And the map is not horrible when you zoom in, and you can actually see road names and numbers and see where those units are. And so when we're looking at those planned activities, everything that's green is a planned activity that we have an opportunity to go in and conduct prescribed fire. And then when it's highlighted as red, that means that the activity that the prescribed fire is imminent. That's either going on that day, it's planned the next day, or we're currently immediately just completed ignitions. Then once it's turned black, is really that phase of we're in full mop up and patrol mode. And so you can see there's a number of units that are black. We've been burning. We're a few weeks into or a month into prescribed fire season already. And it came on a little bit late this season, but we'll try to get as much done as we can. And so this is a great place to go to if you're ever interested in it. I just saw a press release or I got a text alert that they're burning. I can now go to this site and look and see this interactive map and identify where this burn is if you have any questions. Of course, the Forest Service is always open for questions. If you call front desk, then I'm happy to get routed to me and I'll respond, or our public information respond. So something I do want to highlight is we understand that we need to get more fire on the landscape. If we're looking at a natural fire turn interval across the landscape of the Deschutes National Forest, 1.6 million acres, of that 1 million acres or so of dry pine, we should be burning probably 40,000 acres a year out there to be really in that natural fire turn interval. We're not quite there yet. And it's going to be a while to get there. But on a 10-year average, what we've been accomplishing is for underburning, we've been accomplishing about 6,500 acres. So we've got a long ways to get there, but we're trying to make strides to get there. We've also been accomplishing pile burning and then mowing and mastication. Those are other treatments that oftentimes lends towards that prescribed fire.
And include prescribed fire.
Yes, it will. It does include prescribed fire. The Cap View project area is about 26,000 acre project area, and I believe 2/3 of it, it might be even a little higher than that, has prescribed fire planned in that once we are able to accomplish the rest of the fuel treatments, prepping for it. So in 25, this year, we have so you see a lot of green up there. We have about 18,000 acres that in signed burn plans that's ready to burn. We won't accomplish all those 18,000 acres because of a variety of different reasons. Mostly because we don't get the burn windows to be able to burn those. But to make sure that we are following or able to follow the best conditions, we have a lot shelf ready. And then based on the day throughout the spring and fall, we can then move resources from one location to another and then back over to another location and move aggressively into different locations. And so it takes a lot of work from our fuels folks to be engaged and have things ready. But that's what we have to do to be able to accomplish as much as we can. So as of to date, today, we burned about 2,200 acres, a little over 2,200 acres across the Deschutes. And then also something to highlight is Ochoco burned at one day 800 acre unit. And then also the BLM conducted their first prescribed fire in about 10 to 15 years up by Tomo Reservoir. That was last weekend. So that was really exciting to have that happen. That was done with something that we host every year. A number of folks in this room are part of this group, and we host something called the Central Oregon Treks for Prescribed Fire Exchange, a collaborative training with the TNC, the Nature Conservancy, and the Forest Service, and that is based there in Bend. It's been happening. This is its 10th year occurring, although there was a couple years of break over COVID. And so that's been a really successful training and opportunity to increase our burning, but then also get more practitioners on the ground. So that's been really exciting to have happen there. And so really prescribed fire, some last thing that I want to say is Central Oregon, again, is the born fire. We're going to have smoke. And so we know the last few years have been getting worse and worse for that, that smoke season, that summertime smoke season. But in my opinion, we can't pull our foot off the gas on the spring and fall. And we know that we're going to be creating that smoke in the spring and fall, but those are the times that we need to take advantage of to be able to get work done and be proactive on the landscape. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm definitely open for those. Yes, sir.
I know on some of the larger fires, you're using indirect tactics where you're burning out between a control point and the fire front. In some cases, that can be a significant amount of acreage. So when you look at the total fire footprint, do you assess, okay, this is what the fire did, this is what we did, and were those effects that we did, do you monitor that, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we do. And so
And do you take credit for that as a prescribed burn?
well, I'll answer the first part of the question. So yes, we do look at those fire effects and we create fire effects monitoring and then reports, or also fuels effectiveness treatment monitoring reports with any interaction. So if we have conducted a burnout on the edge and it's a mellow backing fire, and we're just connecting the main body of the fire into a road or a control feature, then yes, that goes into our reports, and that goes into our reporting back up to our regional and Washington office, showing that, hey, this was successful because of these treatments. And on the Darlene fire, some of those, we were really successful on the BLM land because they had done a bunch of thinning and mowing right adjacent to the Darlene Road on that western flank of the fire. And we were able to, the first night of the fire, we were able to come through there with 5 or 10 folks and gently put fire in there and connect fire from the head back down to the heel, and really lock off that shoulder of that fire. And so that was obviously a awesome opportunity that we had. But then we do also track that of where we've conducted those treatments, why we have a higher severity or why we have lower severity.
So do you kind of quantify acreage wise, like on this 5,000 acre fire, 500 acres was fire that you said?
We do. And then also something that we have in place is that if we're able to, across the landscape, we track, say, for example, on the Firestone and Flat Top fire, we had high severity fires, or we had high severity fire in some of those areas. We go out there through monitoring with our bear teams. Let's see, bear is
Bird area emergency response.
thank you. I appreciate it. I was getting installed up there. So what they produce oftentimes is soil severity mapping and then burn severity mapping. And so what we look at is where it burned or too hot to maintain the current stand structure that we're looking for, or where it burned and actually probably met objectives if we were conducting a prescribed fire. So in that lower moderate intensity, and that we can actually claim that as a success, that we were trying to get that, essentially good fire, if you will, on the landscape. And so, yes, we do track those as well. Yeah. Yes, sir.
One question is on prescribed burns. I know that they're usually protecting the urban area. I mean, they're usually close to that. And, my question is, are you letting fires that are in the deep forest go, or are you also going in there? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, so the Forest Service, I think the Forest Service has a policy that we are 100% suppression focused. So we suppress every fire out there. Now, there's different tools that we have at our flexibility or at our ability to use. And so some of them are that we may monitor, or we may not suppress a certain flank of that fire because of a safety issue. So, and so we'll see this a lot on the west side because of the topography there, or the immense snags, or and just the opportunity to put firefighters in there, and then the difficulty to pull them out if something happened. And so oftentimes we'll see where we have fire in just this horrible location with lots of snags, rolling debris, a lot of gravity hazards, and there's no way to pull somebody out if they got injured. So so the decision we made that we need to back off and more monitor that fire, even though it's still a 100% suppression fire. We have to take a different approach on that fire, because we can't directly put people in there. We can't just lay the bodies down in front of the fire. And so so we saw that on Little Lava Fire, where the northern flank of that was really inaccessible to be able to get firefighters out of there because of the lava flow that was strung through there. Also, based on our modeling, and the modeling proved to be a little wrong on the initial one, was that it wasn't shown to have drastic increase to the north. Now, we had that late October run, and it pushed further to the north and changed those models, and then we ran some new models and like, oh yeah, okay, well that's we didn't get the weather that was forecasted. So models are only right when they're right. So but I still agree with that the ability to pull a resource, an individual out of that lava flow on the north side with a smoke column laying over it would have been really difficult and probably undoable. And so yeah, there's decisions oftentimes made for the safety of the firefighter.
Isn't that affecting the fact that you're allowing the normal fires to happen like they did 100 years ago?
So oftentimes we're not allowing normal fires to happen. It used to be to speak frankly, it used to be the Forest Service policy and to have fire use on the landscape. That was back in, I think that went away, and Greg was heavily involved in that. I was too, 2009.
Yeah.
So that went away about that time frame where we were managing fires for resource benefit. That is no longer something that the Forest Service does. And it's still brought up occasionally, thinking that we do that, but we don't do that.
Okay, so now we'll get in the deep forest, and we get a lot of extra trees out there. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and in your efforts to expand prescribed burning, are you being supported with the resources, staffing that you need?
Yeah, I would say so. We have resources, firefighters available to support our operations. We locally here, we also have great I would say partners that participate as well in prescribed fire, and I highlighted Trex as one of them, Central Oregon Trex, but we also have agreements in place to have the support and help as well. So I would say a lot of that is based on relationships that we've collectively, we've all been creating over decades here. I think those of us in the room that are part of that now are just recipients of those great relationships that were started a long time ago.
So you're on a course to be able to ramp up to, what you were projecting for what, 40,000?
No, I would not say that we are on a course to ramp up to 40,000 acres. We are on a course right now to stay at where we're at.
Yeah, if you ever read the books such as Dr. Stephen Pine or just Dr. Cohen, they'll tell you that due to what we had natural fire, millennia, over the last millennia, we'll never reach that goal through prescribed fire. No, I mean, what we're doing today is just such a small fraction around communities, protecting those communities. So it's unrealistic for us to think that, the deep in the forest, we're ever going to be able to manage that. Yeah.
No, that's why we have to be strategic about where we do it.
We had a question online. Central Oregon Fire Info prescribed burn information include planned burns related to large forest projects like.
So the centraloregonfire.org, the planned activities on an interactive map highlight only prescribed fire units that we have currently in burn plans. And so no, it does not highlight the projects in Cabin Butte and other project areas that we still have plans to burn, but they're just they're out of ways, and so we've not built those burn plans yet. Does that answer your question, Jim? Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Yes, I have a question about the pine needle depth. How many inches is okay? How many inches is too much? Because often there's this desire to suppress cheatgrass, noxious weeds and so forth. And so in my own community, there's a little bit of, push and pull. We want to eliminate the cheatgrass, keep pine needles on the floor, to suppress those weeds. And yet then I get interested, community members saying, no, we have to pick up every needle because, so can you help me address those concerns or navigate that situation?
Yeah, well, I'll say a couple things. I'm going to kick this over to Ari. So both cheatgrass and needles will respond as a primary carrier. And so they will both be very flammable and act flashy. Cheatgrass will be more flashy than the needle cast. And so needle cast, it's bigger in diameter. So it's going to hold the moisture longer. It also is laying on the ground, and so it will act as a mat. And like you already highlighted, it will act as a mat to suppress weeds from growing in there a little better. And so yeah, I can see the benefit, if you will, from what you're saying for a weed suppression or a weed suppressant. And it will retain a little bit more moisture longer term than cheatgrass will. However, when you get into that dry period, regardless, both of them will burn well. And so needle cast, one thing that needle cast does that cheatgrass doesn't do as much is as it falls, and if you have brush, it lands in the brush and then it becomes it's elevated, and so that helps really propagate the fire moving through the brush as it's really have that elevated primary carrier in the brush, and so even if the brush is green, the needle cast will help burn that quicker. So with that, I would kick over to something more knowledgeable than I am on the bottom side.
More knowledgeable. Cheatgrass is more likely to be invading disturbed areas. So then that's why we're thinking about, in town, our communities where we've done work. And just like how with prescribed fire that we can't apply it everywhere, we can't be removing pine needles everywhere. So, for areas closer to home, that's where we end up recommending removing them, just like with that home ignition zone concept of within 5 feet of structures. But when we're talking about areas that are further from homes, like say there's spaces in neighborhood, yeah, common ground, that's the word I was looking for. 2 to 3 inches deep is what I've been reading is, I mean, that would be effective enough in keeping that invasion back. But we just still try to say to be strategic about breaking up that fuel continuity. But you can't remove it everywhere.
Right, and that's part of the desire on some people's votes, but it's perspectives, but it's not realistic. And then some of the ground is not our ground.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, there's this, well, it's,
I don't know if that helps.
yeah, it does. Thank you.
What, evidently you would need more resources to be able to get to your 40,000 acres. So what would you need?
That's a good question. We need some different, well, to be truthful, we have we need to have a social license to be able to move to larger landscape burning. Because we're gonna be putting up a lot more smokes. Then, like, for example, tomorrow we're burning West Bend and Big Eddy unit for 110 acres or so. The next day, we're planning on another 3 or so 100 acres in that same footprint. But to be able to burn 1,000 acres, we need to have that social license, and that's where it helps to have our partners, people in the community, expressing their interest in continuing to prescribe fire. The other aspect is, and I feel like we have it, but our coordination with the health organizations, the agencies, so DEQ, ODF smoke, forecasting groups, and we have that. And then also it comes down to our, not so much in the West Bend area, but different areas, we have some limitations based on our forest plan, allowing us to burn. So that's also another hurdle that we need to get past. Our forest plan was written in 1990, and so it's a little focused more, isn't as update as the current science is.
I want to add to this. So I was talking with Robert about this last week. I went down to help out with Trex on the Thor units. They were burning a couple 100 acres, but if you look at the map zoomed out, there's a whole Thor project area. And if you do a first entry burn, there's quite a bit of small trees and brush in there. You're going to put up a lot of smoke, and it's going to be harder to suppress if it gets out of control. Once you get to second entry burns, you can do larger units and produce a lot less smoke and have it be a lot easier to control. So my hope is that in 5 to 10 years, the Deschutes National Forest will be in a place where they had to burn 100 acres at a time in order to manage it. They'll be able to burn 1,000 in the same place with the same amount of resources and still produce less smoke. So once we get to second entry maintenance cycle, it should get easier and safer and more cost effective.
Challenge is balancing the first entry at the same time as now some units are ready for second entry. So it's starting to get more complicated.
And it's a long-term project.
It is.
All right, I gotta cut us off. We gotta do round table. We got 10 minutes left. Thank you so much, Robert, for that. Great discussion.
Yes.
What do you have, Ari?
Thank you, Robert.
Appreciate you being here.
I was just gonna say, since Robert was speaking to the importance of social license of sharing about why prescribed burning is happening and reasons for it. Jody from Oregon Living with Fire helped produce these great pocket cards. They are the size of a business card and they fit in your wallet. So I have only 14 of them with me here, but I don't know if some people want them. They just are expressing about why if you share with family, friends, neighbors, if you could pass it around. Yeah, thank you. Why we care about prescribed burning.
Sorry. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start roundtable. You want to start? Oh, you're good?
So we do have a family
webinar for our Oregon customers, Pacific Power. And we would like to, people will send information out to you, so we can send out to the group. But it's a webinar that basically that talks about families and professionals who support children with disabilities and other special health care needs. So like, how do we support them? How do we give people with access and functional needs support through like wildfires? So yeah, I have a newsletter. When is it? It is on June 4th. From 11 to 12, so. Okay, yeah, if you could send me that, my newsletter will probably come out right after that, so I can send it out. When I send out the barbecue art. Perfect, and then if you are a public safety partner, please do sign up for our public safety portal, it's out there, we have a couple trainings left, I'll send out the newsletter again to everybody, but we really need you guys to be able to be on there, so you can see if we do have a PSPS. That it gives you that advanced notification as well as advanced the ability to, you know, change how you want your notification sent to you so that you're aware and you can have your community be aware. What's
And I'll just add, we did, Pacific Power had a public forum on wildfire safety last week, and that video is posted on YouTube. So if you go to Pacific Power, you can find the YouTube video for the one that was located here in Bend. There was some good questions and good information. That's too much.
Sorry for some of us who could not attend this year, but we hope to attend next year. Yeah.
I'll still reach out to you.
Yes, thank you. Please do.
My turn.
Yep.
So, quick question or observation. So, ODEQ said that the mobile lab of EPA was not going to share the data with the public, that was for research only. Is that your understanding as well?
That is my understanding. I don't have a lot of information on that. And yes, I'm not sure how far widely they're sharing that. I think the purple air monitors would be for public consumption, but as far as the mobile app for EPA, I'd have to ask for clarification.
You know, I think I may have mentioned it in this group before, but my own personal concern, not as a rep of any organization, just the smoke impact, and because they've now applied it to Alzheimer's, if you know anyone that has ever suffered from that disease, you will know just how devastating that is. And when the Kaiser report came out, it said, okay, long-term study, first month, linking Alzheimer's to the wildfire smoke. 18% increase in the rate of Alzheimer's with that study group exposed on an ongoing basis. You know, it's something I think that really needs to be thought about a lot more in your modeling and in your public awareness campaigns.
No, thank you.
We gotta keep this to roundtable discussion, so we're just doing updates right now. We only got 5 minutes left to get her out to the rest of the room.
Yeah, Upper Deschutes, river communities. What I'm noticing now is like, really over the last 20 years, there's increasing awareness about defensible space, but just in the last couple, 3 years, there's been a lot more awareness and people starting to take action. We're still helping individual property owners, but I'm really happy to see that it's really got people's attention now, and I hope that more stuff is done on a community scale. Thank you.
Tony?
Well, just once again, this is Project Wildfire, and after those fires in the 90s, Deschutes County put this in code. We've been doing it for a long time, so it really feels like there's a complete story here about where we've been, where we are, where we're going, and exciting that we're all here at the table today. So yeah, be proud of this work, and it really matters. And I'm seeing the same thing from a residential point of view. Some folks, they like southern Deschutes County, 1 acre lots, living behind that little wall of trees. It just was so hip and cool 20 years ago. All of a sudden it turned on and said, oh, wait a minute. And we're getting that message out. So it's really exciting that we're all working together.
Thank you.
We had our wildfire preparedness fair, which was a huge success. We had somewhere between 150 and 200 people. We had about 30 or more tables with organizations and private businesses. Heather Miller did a fantastic job presenting, and it was a big success. And lastly, Robert, if you ever get a chance to drive up Finland Butte Road, what you'll see is what Robert was talking about. On one side of the road, it's been treated. On the other side of the road, it hasn't. It is, when you see it, it's just unbelievable. It will jump right out at you, and it's a powerful vision.
Yeah, for the last couple months, we've been up to the North Rim community, following kind of the big clearing project that's been going on up there, and we've been working with residents doing rock perimeters, hardscapes, fire, things like that. That's what we've been doing.
Which company or which group?
Grantland Management Services, my company. So we've kind of been stuck up in that neighborhood for the last 2 months, I'd say.
David, you said you should, Robin?
So the Summit West Neighborhood District, emergency preparedness team, several of us have been meeting with residents, encouraging them to become fire waste communities, doing wildfire risk assessments and so forth. But over the last couple of months, we've also reached out to and have been meeting with developers within who are building within Summit West, and happy to say that those meetings have been going well. As a result of those meetings, we also reached out to Central Oregon Builders Association and had a very positive meeting with them. Chatted about a couple of different ideas, and so we're very encouraged by that, but it's too early to say just yet, but we're making strides. But some developers who have not been installing the 1/8 inch vents screening, for example, are now coming around and looking at that again, and some are also looking at wooden fence alternatives. So it's really encouraging.
Thank you.
Yeah, our community assistance grant down in the Lapine area is still on hold. It's approved, but the money hasn't been allocated yet. So we're taking people on the wait list and anticipating hopefully before fall, we can find out. We can be able to allocate money and start giving people grants to work down there. ODF is also going to apply for round 4 of the Community Wildfire Defense Grant, and our intent there is to fill in the gaps between what the county gets if they get their round 3 application and what the federal treatment is on some of the larger properties. So we're hoping for a really cohesive county, federal, state effort in fuel reduction down there. If we can get that one, I'm sure we won't hear any results on that for 6 months or more. And then otherwise, we're getting ready for fire season. We've got a bunch of our leads on, and the rest of our seasonal should all be on in June, and we'll be ready to go fight fire.
No updates.
Happy Wildfire Awareness Month. It's been a busy one, although we did most of our work in April. It feels like so much outreach. So yeah, thanks to everyone who participated in all the fairs that were organized. We had probably 700 people or more throughout all the fairs that we did. So just a lot of support and attendance, and that was great. See, the co-op help group had a table at the Home and Garden Show, and we had a really good connections with folks there talking about home hardening and defensible space, just a different platform to do outreach at, and it works really well. federal partners have been out doing team teaching, so they go out and visit first graders around the region and teach about match and lighter safety, which has been cool. So I think that one's wrapped up now, but it's always a great tradition and good outreach there. For OSFM, I received a lot of questions about the memorandum of understanding that was signed from the governor with IBHS, and all I can say is that it's just starting, and we'll find out more as that project develops. So I think the vision is to work directly with IBHS on implementing a lot of that research-based knowledge into our programs, and so excited to see where that goes, but more to come.
Thanks. OSU Extension has some new publications out. I don't have any pretty copies with me today, so I'll try to bring them the next time, although the next time sounds like it'll be a barbecue, so I don't really know if you want one of those at a barbecue. But some of the exciting ones are this statewide project called Not All Flames the Same. So we do have a couple pages in there specific to Central Oregon, where just a way to express to people the fire history, in the current, compared to the current conditions we're seeing today, and just how that differs across the state. Why you would see different fire behavior here than maybe on the west side. So that's a nice one that people are interested in. I can get them copies of. And some other new handouts like prescribed fire liability to landowners, landowner support for prescribed fire, things like that. We have some new publications. And then we have the wildfire home protection strategy workshops that we've been offering. We had a great one yesterday, and we're doing another one this evening in Deschutes River Woods. So I think there's still space. We have like 35 people signed up. So yeah, there's room. If more want to show up, let us know. Yeah, it's a good crowd. So those are workshops where we go through explaining a little bit about fire history locally, and then going into about fire behavior, fire science. But the focus really is about recommendation for structure hardening and landscaping, defensible space, home ignition zones, and learning how to do a home assessment, among other things. So yeah, reach out if you're interested in that, but that's the last one we have planned for this year. If people are interested in more of those workshops, reach out because we can schedule more of them. That's just the ones that we have for now. Thanks.
Yeah, it's great seeing everybody here. It kind of reminds me of pre-pandemic. Now the people in the room, so that's great. We may have to go back to the other room.
Have bigger room.
Yeah, it's nice. I left our district newsletter. We put it out once a year on the table here in case you get a copy of that. Also, I am on the executive board for Keep Oregon Green. A lot of you don't know who Keep Oregon Green is. It's the longest acting wildfire prevention and awareness program in the state of Oregon. It started back in the 1940s. So we have our board meeting coming up, and just some of the things that are coming out of the state level there. That there's a rumor, and I'm not sure if it's going to happen or not. They said if it does happen, it should happen in the next month, that out of the Trump administration, that there's a good chance he will create a new executive order for fire suppression and Forest Service to the Department of Interior. So we'll see if that happens, and if it does, what's going to come of that? Is it good or is it bad? Also, that there's legislation that takes the state forester out of the Board of Forestry and be appointed and run by the state of Oregon through the governor's office. So we'll see where that goes. The Smoky Bear license plates, that's something that we worked on years, so finally got through the state legislature, and to date now we've sold over 90,000 plates, and that money, a large portion of it comes back to Keep Oregon Green for wildfire prevention. We have about $1 million now in our account for wildfire prevention. It's dedicated only for wildfire prevention. And we're number 2 sales in the state, with the Oregon Wonderland being the number 1. We hope to beat them out here in the next year or two, but we've asked our marketing group to probably create a little bit more marketing on selling those license plates so we get more funding to prevent wildfires. And this year, since our predictions as the state, we're looking at as many wildfires maybe as what we had last year. So we're taking a very large percentage of that $1 million and putting it into more wildfire safety and awareness. So Central Oregon, you'll probably see more through KTVZ, the local radio stations, through social media. You're going to see a lot more of that this year. So that's what
Greg Brown at Schuster Woods, and what is that? First thing I got 5 dumpsters out, 20 cubic yards, so it's 100 cubic yards, and they're getting filled within 2 or 3 days. They're going out on Friday, and normally by the end of the weekend, they're full. Other thing is, this week is what I call the roadside cleanup. It's where property owners can put their brush, where it is on the roadside, and we'll come and pick it up. I got 25 property owners that have done that. And then also I've done 10 assessments this year compared to one assessment last 2 years. So people are more concerned, so that's what.
Forest Service had already spoken about that. The Forest Service, gearing up for fire season really, and we'll conduct a sky fire for the next couple weeks, so.
Just in the sake of time, the updates that I gave earlier. But feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about our ongoing fuel reduction projects, future grant opportunities, or status of applications that we've applied into. My email is lauren.street@deschutes.org, so feel free to reach out.
Okay. I don't have any updates.
All right. Okay, sorry we went over a little bit. I appreciate everyone sharing today and all of you being here. Great turnout. Have a good one.
Thank you, everyone. Mark, I want to try the fire thing.
I grabbed this.
I know.
Oh, you know, remember me.
Yeah, I think we're right. I feel. So when it will come out. That's what makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.